We are back answering your stimulus-related questions and your tax-related questions with Mark Hensley from AARP North Carolina Triad Region, Kevin Robinson from Robinson Tax and Accounting, and Scott Braddock with Scott Braddock Financial. You can continue to text your questions. The number there is at the bottom of the screen. All right, Mark, this person says, I think I might have tossed my payment in the trash. Can I get another form of it?
Okay, so since they're not certain, first it's a couple of steps. Go to irs.gov and click Get My Payment and see if you can determine the status. And depending on the answer there, if they have not received the payment, those were deployed. The last payments went out on January the 15th. So there's been enough time passed that should have come in the mail. If you don't have it and you haven't cashed a check or used a debit card, then you're going to use the method filing it on line 30 when you file your taxes.
Okay. This person is asking, I started getting Social Security a few months ago and I'm in the low income bracket. Will I get a stimulus check?
Well, Tanya, I think that would just be contingent on them probably having to do something maybe they haven't done in a while, and that's file tax return. Even though their income is very low, we got to make sure that we have their information in the system so that if they are eligible for recovery rebate credit based on status, their filing status, and then their income, make sure they file to take advantage of getting that if they haven't gotten anything before.
All right, and let's just take a moment because so many of you will have to file taxes maybe for the first time in a long time. We want to make sure that you know that the IRS is doing free e-file. Now, let's put this up so that you can see it. It's right there on the IRS website, and it has at least 9 different kinds of companies or ways that you can file in e-file for free. And it says file your federal taxes online for free. And it says if you didn't get the economic stimulus payment, you may be able to claim it with the recovery rebate credit using free filing. And then they've got a whole list of free filing for you to be able to choose from and be able to do that. It is all online, and again, it is all free. Speaking of which, Mark, last year there was not a lot of tax help for folks that needed to file their taxes. AARP, though, is trying to get volunteers together to do that.
They are currently training volunteers. We did shut our tax aid program down in the midst of the pandemic. This year, they are going to be upping up operation to coincide with the first day of filing, which is, of course, February the 12th, next Friday. You want to check your local locations where you normally would go. So a lot of times that's the senior center, and find out what is going to be the procedure. The website has not been updated yet for the whole nation. They're still working that out. It will likely be a drop-off, come back and pick it up scenario to reduce contact with individuals.
Good to know. All right, we want to continue to kind of educate you and inform you about the stimulus and about taxes. With that said, one of the common questions that we also get is about where does the stimulus money come from? Is it tax money? Is it from 401ks? Is it from the stock market? Where is it from, Scott?
Well, it's certainly not from one of those three, you know, and a lot of folks believe that it's our taxes that are covering the cost for the stimulus, and that's simply not how it works. Our country actually runs on a deficit. Just real quick overview of how this works. What the Treasury does is they go ahead and create debt instruments such as bills, notes, and bonds, and then they sell that to ordinary investors, institutions, sovereign governments. But the big buyer here is the Federal Reserve. They buy up a lot of that debt. And they also have sort of a magical option where they can create and print money. Now, it's not the printing press that you might envision from historical memory where money's just flying off the printing press. No, we live in a digital era. So it's just a matter of going online and producing the money and electronically transferring that over to the Treasury. This shows up as an asset on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, if you will. And if anything, that's really quite substantial right now. It's about $9 trillion. And just real quick, really what we want to pay attention to is inflation at this point in time. The government really needs to do a good job. Mark kind of touched on this earlier, and really know when to cut back on some of the stimulus and this, the PPP and a lot of the Main Street help, just so that we don't face a strong inflationary situation.
All right, as you were answering, someone did text me, where does all the stimulus money come from? So now you know it's from bonds and it adds to our debt. All right, hey, Mark, we're getting a lot of these all at once as well. They're asking about that possible third round. Can we just, the quick 101s of where we are right now?
Quick 101 is the current administration proposes $1,400 based on the same criteria as we've seen the stimulus deployed in the past. Now, Republicans are questioning whether going into that amount of debt and deploying that much stimulus into the economy is necessary. So they are debating about the income thresholds, the eligibility, even about a dependent, that the amount, we've seen two different amounts in the past, what would that be? So this is a developing story, and don't know how soon we're going to have an answer.
All right, well, speaking of dependents, this next text question says, I was a dependent on my parents' tax return 2018 and 2019, but for 2020, I'm going to file my own return. Will I be able to recover the stimulus payments? Kevin?
Well, that's a very valid question. In fact, I got it asked by clients this week, Tanya, but basically the stimulus payments, the first one was based on the 18 or 19 return. If anybody was a dependent, then they didn't get a stimulus payment. Their parents did by claiming them. The last stimulus payment was based on the 19 returns. So, but if they're filing on their own for 2020 tax year, no one else can claim them as a dependent, then, and they didn't get a stimulus payment, basically in 2020, they could be eligible for the recovery rebate credit on their 2020 return. So all hope is not lost. A lot of dependents or college students, as Mark has talked about before, that didn't get them, the stimulus payments could be eligible, and their stimulus payment would come on the return as recovery rebate credit, provided they meet all the eligibility requirements.
Great. And folks, for those of you who had a child in 2020, you too can look at the recovery rebate credit as well and be able to get the stimulus money too. So don't miss that. Again, that is line 30. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.